After War left for the seminary, it was decided that his cousin should join the newly founded primary school in which English, mathematics, geography, nature study, and history, albeit with a heavy colonial slant, were taught, as opposed to the previous school where only religion, reading, and simple arithmetic were taught. A certificate was issued on passing a tough examination at the end of the course, and this was a carte blanche to literally any job to an African in those days. Awiti was enrolled in the school, one of the only two girls. The other 32 were boys. She was almost 13 and on the threshold of puberty. The dropout rate was so high that by the end of the second year, the other girl, who was almost 16, dropped out to get married. 5 boys also dropped out for various reasons, including lack of 3 shillings levied per year at a time when most families simply had no cash and lived entirely on a barter system. This was frequently too hefty a sum to raise. Almost all the students were adults, and while it made good sense to learn religion for 1 year, it made absolutely no sense to prolong the agony for 8 years to get a piece of paper that was supposed to enable one to work for the white man. And who in his right mind would want that? The accepted form of wealth was cattle. A man who had them was wealthy, and one who did not have at least a few was regarded as the lowest form of life. Maybe for such and their children, pursuit of the white man's education held some attraction, but there was the insurmountable problem of the levy. For if those rich in cattle could not easily raise that elusive 3 shillings, how much more the son of a man who had nothing? In any case, it was considered better to try to lift the yoke of poverty by tilling the land rather than lying about in some classroom. If it was hard for a boy to get an education, it was well nigh impossible for a girl. The purpose of female education was marriage and childbearing, and by the same token to bring wealth to her family with the bride price. In fact, a poor man with absolutely nothing to his name except some daughters had a guaranteed wealth if they could hang on long enough to come of age. If education was not necessary for boys, it was superfluous for girls. However, for Awiti, several factors came together in her favor. The most important was the pioneering and daring spirit of her grandmother and mother. Secondly, she was the future of those 2 aging women. Now that her cousin and only close male relative was in the seminary, she was the only connection they had to the continuity of the family, something that the African, like the Chinese, holds dear to his heart. She was the center of their world, and nothing was too good for her, though they struggled not to show it or to spoil her in any external way. Therefore, money was found for her education year in, year out, until she reached the top class at 19. By this time, the class was down to 11. She herself and 10 boys. What is more, she held her position very well, even in a subject she disliked as much as mathematics, for as she grew older, her earlier fleetiness left her. She developed her grandmother's steely determination, which was not surprising because her grandmother was her confidant and mentor, but it was not easy and everybody looked at her askance. A girl to be so clever, to show it openly, to receive commendation after commendation, it was too much. She should be ashamed, or at least try to hide her brilliance. Otherwise, they prophesied darkly, no man will marry her. That, of course, was supposed to be a catastrophe. Out of the 11 who sat for the examination, only 5 passed, and Awiti was the best of them. The certificates were awarded 3 months later, and all the villagers came to see for themselves. Elizabeth Awiti Okumu, called the head teacher. No PhD holder ever had such a sweet sense of victory as this barefoot African girl who, without even knowing it, was the prototype of others yet to come. With the certificate came the invitation to a newly opened teacher training college. It was unbelievable. She had not even thought of the future. What was she to do? Grandmother, mother, look. "What is it, my child?" asked the ever-serene Akoko, now a grizzled old lady, but still possessing the sweetest smile that ever lit a woman's face. Maria, on the other hand, felt her heart thumping away in her chest. Her mouth tasted bitter and she felt nauseated. All the years of her childhood were coming back. There was a vice-like bound around her head and she thought she would faint. In her head, one thought went round and round, beating its wings like a trapped bird. "My child, no, not you, not you." She would have given it a voice if her throat was not in a spasm. If anything happened to this child, if she was taken away from her, she knew that she would die. Her little baby who had defied all odds to live to the very threshold of adulthood. "A sword shall pierce thy soul, a sword shall pierce thy soul." And suddenly she realized she had spoken loudly and everyone turned around to stare. "Control yourself," hissed Akoko as Awiti stared at her mother in shock. She hadn't even divulged the contents of the letter yet. What could her mother be talking about? Eventually, the presentation was over. The teacher, seeing the commotion at the back, commended Awiti for her good work, but wisely refrained from mentioning the invitation. The poor girl had suffered long enough at the hands of the boys and the villagers. When the three got back to their simple grass-thatched hut, the old woman reprimanded her middle-aged daughter as she had never done before. The young girl had meanwhile been dispatched to fetch water. She was glad to go, for she was afraid of her mother. "My child, I'm terribly ashamed of you. You are no longer young, yet you have never been anything but selfish, with the selfishness of a child. You feel that other people may suffer, but as for you, it is your right to be happy. You shake like a reed in the wind because you have never forgiven God for not giving you as many children as other women whom you consider less worthy, and you feel that God owes it to you to make sure that your only child lives and prospers. Learn, my child, that God owes nobody anything. He gives to all men, both wicked and good, from his great bounty, according to his wisdom and mercy. You are no longer a child, yet you understand nothing. Don't you know that from the height of heaven and the vastness of his eternity, he sees you as you shall be 100 seasons hence, when no one on earth will have any memory of you, and your bloodline will have mingled and pattered out like a well in the dry season? You are not wise, my child. Learn wisdom. Put your child in his hands, who can both plant and bring fruition. Try to be happy for Awiti when she tells us the news. Whatever it is, don't you see the world is changing and she is acquiring what will make the difference as to whether she survives or perishes? Maria eventually calmed down and her racing heart stilled within her. But when she heard her daughter's footsteps on the threshold, the band tightened around her again and she started breathing fast like a woman in labor. She struggled to control herself. "Come in, Awiti, and read for us the letter that the teacher gave you," said Akoko, her voice even. She watched her granddaughter, who had been balancing the pot beautifully on her head, but looking somewhat unsure as to whether she should enter or go back with the pot. She brought the pot down to her knee, stooped, and entered the house. The pot held at her waist level, all in one sweeping, graceful motion. She poured the water into the big mother pot, which was used as a water reservoir, and brought out the envelope and proceeded to translate. This letter comes from a head teacher of a school called a college, where they teach teachers how to teach children. He says he is happy to offer me a place in his college so that I can also learn how to be a teacher. He says that this takes 2 years. He says that though they do not charge school fees, I will be expected to arrive with at least 3 frocks, and a pair of shoes, plus other small things like a soap and a towel. He says I should write to him as soon as possible to tell him whether I accept or not. The school will open in September, 7 months from now. She wanted to add, I am so happy, but thought better of it. There was complete silence for so long that she felt her skin prickle in apprehension. Eventually, her grandmother spoke formally. I see, we have heard you, my child, but this is a serious matter. Your mother and I have to think about it carefully. For the first time in many years, she felt the need of the kind of support that a good and strong man could give. She missed her husband, Chief Oworkembo, and his level-headed approach to life in general and sticky problems in particular.